Hey YouTube, it's ICU. Today we're going to be taking a look at Samsung's all-new Galaxy Note 5, unboxing it, and kind of comparing it against Apple's iPhone 6 Plus to see if we can answer the question of which one's better, the Note 5 or the 6 Plus. Today's episode is brought to you in part by lynda.com. Go to lynda.com/Tanner for a 10-day free trial and get unlimited access to courses ranging from web development to video editing, similar to what I've done here in today's video actually, and it will definitely help out the channel. Samsung's back at it with their Note series, this time with the Galaxy Note 5, and they're one of the first companies, if not the first, to introduce a phablet-style design in one of their flagship smartphones and to actually have it work. A lot of people attribute the company to actually being one of the main reasons Apple decided to go with the larger design for the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. However, with Samsung recently having copied Apple's iPhone 6 and 6 Plus design, there's absolutely no doubt about it. You can see so many comparisons online between the S6 and the iPhone 6. Samsung's sales are starting to slip even before that, really. They've kind of picked up since then, but there's no doubt that the company is starting to lag. So will the Note 5 be enough to allow Samsung to reclaim the throne of the phablet smartphone sector that they helped establish? Let's take a look. First though, there are a few things I need to preface with. Keep in mind that these are both absolutely great phones, and the iPhone 6 Plus was released last September, so in 2014. We're approaching September of 2015, which means it's almost time for another iPhone refresh. So the Apple hardware and Apple tech inside of the 6 Plus is definitely starting to show its age. However, the Note 5 is brand new. It has Samsung's latest tech in it, so it will take the win in a number of categories we're going to discuss in today's video. That will definitely change, or that could change rather, I should say, as we start to approach the launch and release of the next generation iPhone, likely being the iPhone 6s. But we're not really going to discuss or throw out specifications in today's video at all, except for one point when we discuss the iPhone 6. If you want a spec video, there's so many others online, and you can also find details on a number of websites. And the reason we're not going to be talking about them is for the fact that I think they're starting to become a marketing ploy, and they definitely attribute to user or customer confusion when actually picking a handset, because specifications don't always translate to performance. So in today's video, we're going to be focused on the real world applications and the real world performance of both of these phones, guys. And finally, this probably goes without saying, but everything in today's video is just my opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and of course that goes for those of you who decide to comment down below in the comment section. Feel free to share your thoughts on either of these two awesome smartphones, and definitely keep it civilized, please. So with that said, let's get straight into it. First and foremost, discussing the design of these two smartphones. Now, they look absolutely amazing. Both of them are great. They're clean, and they have that next generation look we've been craving for so long. Samsung's finally decided to ditch the gaudy plastic design, though it isn't without its drawbacks. We have no removable battery and no expandable memory in this year's Note series. Furthermore, the Note 5 adopts a design from its smaller counterparts, the S6 and the S6 Edge, which of course is heavily influenced by Apple's iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus, which I mentioned before. So if you go with either of these phones, the design on both are absolutely amazing. However, if you want the original, go with the iPhone. As I said though, that really doesn't matter. And speaking of not mattering or factoring into things too much, let's talk about the screen. Now, the Note 5 does definitely have a better screen on paper, and I will say this, the black levels as well as some of the colors look amazing and better on the Note 5, but when you're actually using both devices for an extended period of time, I don't really think you'll notice too much. However, I will say this, I really hope that Apple adopts OLED technology with the next generation iPhone 6s and 6s Plus, because it looks absolutely amazing. I've had the pleasure of being able to use an OLED device for a while now, the Apple Watch, and I can't tell you how great it is to have the bezels and the screen kind of be seamless with one another, not be able to tell where the bezel stops and where the screen starts, because the black levels on the screen are just that good. And as far as resolution goes, that doesn't play into it really at all whatsoever. It really doesn't matter. It's a moot point, and the reason for that is because of Retina, a term that Apple coined first with the iPhone 4, and essentially what it stands for is a display with such a high resolution that the human eye cannot distinguish individual pixels at an average average viewing distance, which is about half an arm's length. The iPhone 6 Plus is the best device as far as pixel density is concerned from Apple thus far in an iPhone. And because it's Retina and uses 3x assets, things look great on it. And as far as crispness is concerned, both are perfect and indistinguishable from one another. The only real difference here is in the actual display tech itself. Again, that OLED really does give Samsung the leg up here. Now for performance, I really don't like benchmark tests, but we're going to run through them on both of these phones. Now Geekbench is just a tool that provides an overall cumulative computing score that's supposed to be a numeric representation of your device's capabilities. And while that is true for one specific OS, when we're talking cross OS, meaning iOS and Android, the lines start to blur and things are a lot harder to determine as far as what actually performs better. Because when you look at these numbers, you'll say, yeah, the Note 5 definitely takes the win here, but does it actually? Well, let me say this. In real world applications, you will not be able to tell the difference between the two as far as scrolling through pages, trying to launch up applications, etc. The only drawback we have here on the iPhone is just its limitation of 1 GB of RAM, which is only really apparent when you're multitasking between a large number of applications as well as a number of tabs inside of Safari. That will be rectified though with the iPhone 6s, which is expected to feature 2 GB of RAM like the iPad Air 2, which has absolutely phenomenal performance. Also, keep in mind that Apple has the added benefit of being able to develop iOS specifically for the hardware, so they can create the hardware and the software in synchronous with one another, and they can optimize them to work perfectly in conjunction. Samsung, on the other hand, while they do have TouchWiz and they've been rumored to be dabbling with their own mobile OS, they still rely on Google Android, which of course is developed by Google to run on a wide array of devices. So Samsung's not able to have as much control over the operating system as Apple is with iOS. That's to be expected. That's why we have higher specifications on the Note 5, and that's why we can't really take specifications into account when comparing these two devices, because whereas Apple's remedy for performance is optimization, Samsung's is throwing extra specs in there and just cramming this thing full of awesome hardware, at least on paper. And speaking of, let's talk about multitasking now. From a stock standpoint, Samsung definitely has the advantage here. We can run multiple applications side by side and you can do so much more, and there are a couple of interesting S Pen tricks. However, with iOS 9, Apple is starting to test the waters with split screen multitasking, at least with the iPad, and hopefully Apple will start to see that larger iPhone owners really want this option. However, jailbreaking makes that a moot point, and I don't want to hear the argument from Android owners stating that if you're going to jailbreak anyway, just get an Android device, because that's simply not true. At any rate though, you can do things like run multiple application windows even more than you can on a Samsung device, or picture-in-picture, really whatever you want. There's so many different great multitasking tweaks for iOS. Now next up, let's get into the camera. It really does depend on your preference, but it's pretty much a no contest. And keep in mind, megapixels aren't everything. What really matters when determining which pictures are actually better from which smartphone are the camera optics. Now the next generation iPhone, the 6s, is expected to feature the biggest camera improvement since the iPhone's initial release, the very first iPhone. So while the Note 5 wins now for the camera, in my opinion, that might not be the case next month with the 6s Plus. Now as we start to wrap up here, I'm going to mention ecosystem. This is really where iOS stands out to me, and this is why I'll probably never switch to Android. The iOS and Apple ecosystem in general is just far superior to anything on Android. There's no doubt about that. You really just can't argue with it unless you've experienced both, and unless you've had the opportunity to use a wide array of Apple devices and a wide array of Android devices. So iOS and iPhones work best with a Mac, and of course if you have an iPad to accompany that, even better. There are so many cross-Apple platform advantages that I really can't get into all of them, but just to list a few, we have iMessage, which was one of the first. Everything that we have in iCloud, just all of your information on multiple devices will be there without having to do anything, install any sort of a third-party app. It's just seamlessly integrated into it by default. That's only just starting to scratch the surface though, and Apple's working to improve it on a constant basis, especially with continuity, which was introduced last fall. That makes everything better with SMS and call forwarding, handoff, etc. And while there are alternatives on Android to offer similar functionality, some of which are even developed by Google themselves, really nothing can best Apple in this department. department. That's where Apple has the massive win, and for some people like me, that's enough to always stick with iOS or with an iPhone, regardless of specifications or even really performance, I guess to some extent. If the performance on the iPhone 6 Plus was significantly inferior when compared to the Note 5, I may actually consider the Note 5, but because it's not, and because we have that ecosystem here, that's why the iPhone 6 Plus is a win in my book, and applications and the app ecosystem is the final nail in the coffin as to why I wouldn't choose Android as of recording this video right now in present day. There's no questioning that the applications developed for iOS just provide a better experience, and the apps are overall higher quality. The reason for that is because developers for iOS really only have to focus on three things with some minor variations in the mix: the iPhone, the iPad, and the iPod Touch, whereas Android developers have to create applications that can function on a wide array of devices with various hardware and limitations. So this isn't really a drawback when talking about the Note 5, but because developers have to create apps that can function on a Note 5, as well as something like a $100 crappy Android smartphone, that kind of sets things back, and developers are more limited to what they can actually do with their applications and the code if they want to reach as many users as possible, which obviously they do. So developers on iOS can spend less time worrying about which phones and which devices are supported and more time focused on bettering their applications. And even apps that are from the exact same developers on iOS and Android, the experience on the former of the two is definitely superior, at least for now. Things are starting to improve with Google's new material design standards, but I think that will really take a while to fully kick in, and before we see even a more blurred line between the two and between the applications we find on iOS and Android. So these are just my thoughts. What do you guys think? I'd really love to hear your opinions down below in the comment section. And I wanted to thank our sponsor for today's video, lynda.com/Tanner, the best source for comprehensive tutorials ranging from web development to photography and design. Their guides on Final Cut Pro, X software I use almost every day, and Xcode, particularly the Swift training guides, are fantastic. In fact, you can use lynda.com's video tutorials to learn how to edit videos like mine, similar to the one you're watching now. Go to lynda.com/Tanner to start your 10-day free trial right now. And it really does help out the channel too. That's lynda.com/Tanner. Use the link now so they know I sent you. And of course, if you guys like this video and you found anything I said in it useful or helpful, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. I'm also going to be holding an iPhone 6s giveaway next month, so the brand new next generation iPhone. If you're interested in that, again, let me know down below in the comment section so I know definitively whether to hold it and when to hold it, whether it's closer to the iPhone 6s launch or a little bit later. Again, let me know in the comments, and if you want to be updated even more often, such as when I release videos similar to this one and cover other things like iOS and jailbreaking, just be sure to click the subscribe button down below next to my channel name if you have yet to. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, as well as Instagram at ICUID, and until next time, this is ICU signing out.